let us know when you go live.
I'm going that way.
We'll cut our usual antics out about that time. Like his sense of humor. I personally, after 4 years, have figured it out.
Yeah, it takes a while.
It's something that didn't come to me automatically right from the get-go.
I just got this and
Your sense of humor.
trying to figure that out.
I agree,
Hey,
except
we are
when you're
live
not.
here. So.
Oh, Bill,
Well,
you been to Kiwanis lately?
pardon me?
You been to Kiwanis lately?
I have not been there since
I've not been there.
before Christmas.
I was at the Music City Bowl on the 30th, so I missed that one. I think tomorrow the Lieutenant Governor over Central Indiana is going to be at our meeting.
I probably won't go to that one.
I shouldn't have told you who's on the agenda. They're going to go, we need to increase membership.
Yeah, she'll be here in a minute.
Oh, howdy doody time.
RDC wasn't in the van.
We're missing Susan and Debbie. Oh, I have not heard that. All you have to do is stand upside down on your head. I'll behave.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the ARP Committee's meeting. We hold these meetings the second and fourth Wednesday of the month for the foreseeable future. And they are always scheduled at 2 o'clock. This meeting is now called to order.
Have at it. Get organized here.
So I know there's been a lot of questions about essential pay and what we're doing with essential pay. We are still working through the final rule from this ARP funds just came out last Friday. Is it Friday, Kenan? Within the last few days, the final rule.
Final came out on the 6th, whatever day
6th.
that was.
And we were waiting to see if anything changed. So we are working on it. I know there's another issue that has been brought to the council's attention regarding the emergency, the shutdown of the emergency. And so we're dealing with two separate subjects on that, the emergency shutdown versus the essential pay. And I had a conversation with Sheriff McCorkle and Major Davis this morning. And the essential pay has always been, as far as I know, at the top of everybody's list of something that we are going to do. It's just taking us a while to work through it. So I ask that everybody be patient and bear with us. Not saying it's not going to happen. It's at the top of everybody's list. So I'm sure that will come up as how the rules have changed and what we can do. Joel Harvey will be here to listen to questions, concerns that we have and the different changes so that he can research and give us answers back. He's just running a little bit late. Okay. So Kenan, I'm going to turn, since you've done most of this summary, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, if you are okay.
Okay. It looks like Bobby shared with you I call it Reader's Digest condensed version of the 44-page overview, which I think the entire final rule from Treasury is 434 pages. Now, it is more readable than the interim rule was back of May of 2021. But why it's 434 pages is they also put in there questions from counties, from tribes, from states, from municipalities, from large cities, small cities. They put those questions in there and answer how they've addressed them. So it's taken up a lot of print. The overview leaves out those justifications for why they changed from the interim to the final and just gives the rules, which makes it pretty readable and something that's palatable that most average person can read. It's not as much legalese as the interim was, the 153-page interim from last May, that we knew from reading it was written by lawyers and bureaucrats. This one is more for the lay citizen and average government official, et cetera. What I did last week after receiving that, I think Debbie Walker sent that to us from AIC, the Association of Indiana Counties, last Thursday, is glean through the 44-page overview that's pretty readable down to 6 pages of highlights, which looks like what Bobby had in front of you, even though it's stapled kind of funny. It's the print. We blame the printer, no, not the operator. But that gleans down from 453 pages of a lot of extra that we don't need to know. She is here with child in tow, including the child's toes. She's growing up so much. I digress. So at any rate, what you have before you, 453 down to the overview that just deals with the rules, the final rules, to the overview down to 6 pages. If you find if you have extra time like this retired person does, though not much more than I did when I worked, if you have extra time and you spot inaccuracies in my summarization, let me know. I've gone over it 3 times. I don't think it's inaccurate, but if you find any, please let me know. So if you are opposed to long documents and heavy reading, I truly believe if you read my 6-page summarization, you will get the gist of the final rules. And I tried to point out what's changed and what's new from the interim rules. So it takes about an hour to read through my 6 pages instead of 20 hours to read through the 453 final rules. It's a lot of extra stuff you don't need to know. So I've tried to help you out. And it also is one way that I learn is by reading and taking notes and outlining. So if my learning style helps you, I'm glad.
So one thing that was done in the final is the lost revenues. We can take up to 10 million, which we got 9 point.
That is the biggest takeaway. You know, we've been struggling or talking back and forth about lost revenues is the only category of the 4, excuse me, where we have leeway. They've come back miraculously and put what was supposedly going to be in that 5735 House rule. They incorporated that in the final rule, so we can treat any entity, county, city, that received less than $10 million, they can spend up to $10 million as if it's lost revenue. We got 9.3 million. We can treat the entire 100% as we were considering lost revenues under the interim rules, meaning we have tremendous flexibility over what we had prior to this meeting. Yes, our entire amount can be used as if it fell under lost revenues. So we have much more flexibility. So we probably don't need as many hours of Baker Tilly's work. We probably don't take offense to this, Joel. We'll probably not need quite as much legal advice as we thought with the more cumbersome, legalistic interim rules. So we're in a better position now to know that we don't have the restrictions that we had as we were deliberating throughout 2021. I think that's the biggest takeaway, Bobby, and the group.
But there still are certain restrictions. We still have to follow certain guidelines, even with the lost revenue, for example, capital projects.
Capital projects, and there still is specific guidance to premium pay for essential workers. There's still certain categories, mostly the same, of what an essential worker is. And the overarching theme that they're emphasizing is things should be measured against the impact of the pandemic, because what precipitated this rule in the first place, or this legislation, was response to the pandemic. So most of the essential workers fall under people who've had firsthand contact with the public or with blood or handling of items that could potentially spread the COVID virus. That's still an underlying theme, but a lot of the categories we thought were eligible still are, but they expanded upon that list. And they gave us more guidance on what premium pay, who qualifies and who doesn't, as well as which categories of individuals do. For example, ineligible would be people who work from home. They say telemarketing, or those that chose to do their work at home or in a residence, they're ineligible. It specifically states that, or reiterates that from the interim rule, because it did state that in the interim prior to. So, other questions? Pick my brain, it won't take long.
So the premium pay can be up to $13 per hour.
It's still $13 an hour,
And it's
$25,000 maximum
$1,000 maximum
per person.
per person, and regular in-person interactions with patients, the public, or coworkers, or a person, or regular physical handling of items that were handled by patients, public, and coworkers.
Correct. And there's still some limitations. We cannot support rainy day funds or previous lawsuits or decrees. We can match non-federal grants and other projects, which we thought was the case. They actually spelled that out. So if there's something we're going for, like the owner-occupied through ARA, they specifically say that we can use ARPA or ARP funds for that match. So that's reiterating what we already had gotten from, I think, AIC. And there is, as you mentioned, Bobby, there's an enumeration of capital projects that we can and cannot use, which was kind of vague in the interim. So water, sewer, and broadband is still a specific area that is emphasized. Support for COVID public health and economic response covers nearly half the pages of that 44-page overview. So I think we can read from that. It's still an emphasis, but the fact that we're receiving under $10 million gives us a lot of flexibility. And under capital projects, if you've had a chance to read my summary, it gives a lot more flexibility for capital projects under $1 million. If it's under $1 million and is under one of the many eligible projects that they list in the final rule, then there's very little justification you have to give to Treasury. If it's over $1 million and still under the list, you have to give more justification. If it's over $1 million and not enumerated in the final rules as an eligible use, you have to give a lot of justification stemming back to the pandemic. But any project, capital project that's under the list of enumerated allowances, we can, without little legal or other justification, go for. So that's expanded and enumerated much better under these final rules. Premium pay, they enumerated better than they did. We know, for example, that that list of exempt from overtime under the Fair Labor Act, I think, are ineligible. Elected officials are ineligible for getting premium pay. And help me, there's one other category that's ineligible, volunteers. We can give it to part-time, but we can't give it to volunteers. So one of the previous meetings, we talked about volunteer fire departments. I think what Joel will have to help us with is, in one area it says we can, when it comes under law enforcement and EMS and the like, we can now purchase under capital expenditures sheriff vehicles, police vehicles, ambulances. But I don't know about volunteer fire department fire trucks. Fire trucks are listed as eligible, but I think that would be like for the city of Newcastle. The question is, under the term volunteer, can we do that capital expenditure if someone applied for it later on, or can we not? I don't know the answer to that. That's where we need the legal.
I guess the next question was, is if that was to help the volunteer fire departments out, is it just giving funds for them to, like a 501c3, they'd be considered like any other not-for-profit?
I tend to think that's probably correct.
Be considered not-for-profit versus volunteer?
If they file a 501c3 or a 501c19, and I don't know what volunteer fire departments fall under the tax code.
Most fall under 501c3.
Okay, then I would say yes, Bobby. And Joel can investigate that and give us a final legal response. But I do believe that things in the county and those in incorporated towns that we can help, like we discussed at the last meeting. We can help if they, we open it up for applications. I think it's something that, as long as we get legal okay with, I don't think we're going to be needing the $1 million that we thought we would for legal, like legal advice and auditing, because the restrictions are far fewer and the hoops are much, much, much less and lower than what they were before. So I don't think $1 million is going to be necessary, because I don't think they're going to slap our hands. They said this final rules take effect on April 1st, but they also said, as a footnote, if you follow them today, there'll be no repercussions. So in other words, we can follow these more flexible final rules and not get our hands slapped. I don't think they're in it to penalize people, as long as we have a concerted effort to follow the guidelines.
As long as you don't give elected officials essential pay.
Or volunteers,
Counties that did that, yeah.
or those that are exempt employees. If they're exempt from overtime, they are ineligible for essential pay, or premium pay for essential workers. They do specify that.
Do you want to address I'm just going to let you lead this. The address, we sent out an email yesterday asking everybody to list the different things.
The priorities.
Yes. So did you? Okay. Do you want or?
Some of the stuff I come up with on priorities was like getting a grant writer, and then basically taking care of some of our county buildings.
Bill, you might want to use your mic, because we have quite a few people in the audience. I think we're being broadcast, right?
Okay.
But I doubt if they can hear you in the back of the room.
But yeah, I mean, mine was, like I say, start with the grant writer, working on some of the county buildings that need things done. And it goes to digitizing roads.
What you say digitizing?
Yeah, of records, like
Oh, I thought you said roads.
digitizing and roads.
Oh,
Yeah.
I couldn't
there-
figure out how you
there was a
digitize.
comment
I
there.
know we've modernized. I didn't know how we digitize the roads.
And then I got like taking care of the essential workers and the other municipalities that's going to fall that we could help with this money.
essential pay, volunteer fire departments, memorial park repairs, digitizing county records, and repair of county buildings. So that's, my list is pretty much the same as those two, adding in, because we can purchase, potentially purchase sheriff's vehicles and ambulances, I want to add those in as, in my list, as well as looking at if body cameras, the purchase of body cameras could be for the sheriff's department, and also optional, the license plate readers that they use, the automatic license plate readers on interstate for 70, 36, 38, and 3. And the software, that software is like $60,000. The equipment and software is $60,000 for 5 years total. So looking at, those are the other things that I would add to my priority list.
I have a question.
I got to get Joel's yes that those can be used for.
I'll make a note of it.
Did you come up with that on your own, or did you talk to Rick and Jay?
I came up with that on my own. Right, Sheriff? Right, Sheriff?
I have a hard time believing that.
I talked to Sheriff McCorkle and Major Davis today.
Okay, I believe that.
You don't think I'm smart enough to come with that on my own?
I just don't know where that came from. I figured it might come from that department across the street.
Great idea, yeah, I never thought of it.
It makes
You look
sense,
at
I
me like,
think.
where did that come from? No, I talked to Sheriff.
Do other counties use this digitizing license plates?
The automated license plate reader. Rick.
So like I-70 and 3 and 36 and all that? No, this falls under.
All the car, all the road guys.
So does that come to a computer or then through dispatch to the radios? So it's very quick. So if we have an amber alert or a silver alert, that would, on a license plate, we would, cool. And we definitely don't want to be outdone by Knightstown.
See, if I'm trying to persuade that it's COVID related, it means that we don't have to have somebody all the time stopping every vehicle looking for somebody going face to face. That's my justification. I've justified it.
We don't use quotas here, do we? Just slap me.
Yes, body cameras. I don't, they may be. Yeah, they may be eligible for the general obligation go bond. Okay. Okay, yeah, I didn't even think about that because we're doing the security cameras out of the go bond, so. Yeah.
No, they're saying why the body cameras out of the good one.
I think we have options now. We have options. Madam Chair, I was whispering over here, and I don't want to be,
I'm sorry.
I was whispering over here to these guys having a sidebar, and I want to go public so somebody doesn't say that I have an open door violation. They were talking about body cameras, and I said, we have options now. GeoBond, ARP. I wanted that to be public.
Oh, yes, we have options, geo bond, or the go bond, and
I would really like to have new flooring in the walls. Just gonna throw that out. I didn't know exactly what she said.
she said she really would like to have her walls painted and the carpet in her office.
Is that ineligible because it's an elected official? I'm sorry.
Ed, you want to go over your list?
I took the liberty of handwriting a list, which I hope you can all just use to add to it. I did not prioritize. I think at this time it's a little premature. I think we still need to further develop the list. One thing I left off the list that you can all add is $1 million that we already spent on the sanitary sewer line that goes from the prison and the jail to Newcastle.
That's already been appropriated.
Right, but it is money that comes out of the 9+ million, and it should be on the list. Anyway, I think that there are several things. I did add a few things. One, I think I mentioned last time, the amphitheater at the Art Park. I don't know if you can call it an amphitheater, but the open air pavilion that's just next to the library down the steps needs a new roof. I put the Veterans Museum on my list. Also, going back about 6 weeks or so, we had DLZ, an engineering company, come and take a look at our buildings. And one of the things that we, I think, all have on our list is county buildings, repair and maintenance. And part of the problem that we've had this year, it is very difficult for us as somewhat amateurs to decide exactly what needs to be fixed on some of these buildings, particularly this 100-plus-year-old courthouse, and how much it costs. So DLZ, which is a company I think we're all familiar with, said for approximately $8,500, they will take a very good look at this courthouse, the Justice Center, and the Masonic Building, and give us a list of priorities and what needs to be fixed first, second, third, et cetera, and approximately how much it costs. I think that's something that's very valuable, and I don't know if we can pay for it out of ARPA money. If we can, might be a good thing to add to our list. And several things have been added to the list today: the grant writer, body cameras, license plate reader, whatever. So before I try to prioritize all these things, I think we need to further develop the list. But I am
That's what we're doing today.
right, and I'm pretty much in agreement with the things that are on the list so far.
Well, I mean, so far, everybody's list, this is trouble when you're on the end of the totem pole here. Everybody goes through everything that we've all are generally in agreement with everything that's on the list. Everybody knows that if it was up to me, I'd put it all on county roads because our roads suck. But we also have other things we have to address, and we've agreed the fact that the county has to, seems to at least come first.
It's new, I don't know how to turn it off. Sorry.
Because we've let,
I didn't either, I was just mortified.
we've got a lot of things in the county that we've let go over the last probably several decades that should have been addressed a long time ago, and the money was never there. This is a one-time opportunity, and even looking down this list, the ask and the addresses that we have here are going to far outpace the money that we have. So we are going to have to be very cautious on what we do before we spend it all on one or two items and then we're out of money again. So that's, I mean, the grant writer, I like. If we find somebody that we can make this money go farther, and if someone's good enough at grant writing, they should be able to make themselves enough money that would cover their cost in writing the grants that would save us some money and actually make this money go a lot farther. And I agree with us getting a little more flexibility. We shouldn't have to pay the powers that be to tell us what to do with this money. I think we're all responsible enough to be able to do that on our own. But I like the idea of helping all the county entities that we have here to make things a little easier and better for them. So that's it for me.
Well, we need to look at essential pay. But we really need to look at digitizing too. And I'm going back to my timekeeping system. I really want a timekeeping system.
And what does that do again? Thank you over there.
That timekeeping system,
I forgot.
they would clock in and out, and then it would interact with my payroll system. And then when you only have 3 people in your office, you're not working day and night trying just to get payroll done because COVID hit your office.
And the one that's being looked at, and it's been few months ago. It's made for municipalities that have sheriff's departments and the different hours, the 35 hours versus the 40 hours versus the, you guys work at however many hours, you don't have set hours.
It does the 28-day shift versus the 14-day shift. It works with all of that. It takes care of all of that.
So it'd really help with efficiency of existing employees.
Supervisors just, digitally sign time cards and it just gets sent. There's a lot of things in it.
So again, this would bring us into the 21st century.
And like I said, when you have 4 people, counting myself in an office of 9, and you're trying to figure out how to get payroll done, it would just make your life a lot easier.
Did you happen to get a cost estimate?
Yes, but I have to go look it up. I can't remember what it was. Do you, Bobby?
It's been long enough ago and I've had enough numbers in my head.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was.
It wasn't, I don't believe it was something that we both went, oh my gosh, that's way too expensive to do.
It wasn't even $100,000. It was way less than $100,000.
Yeah, it was something really reasonable. And I also want to say that, was there a feature in there that you couldn't clock in until you were, if you clocked in on your phone, you had to be within a certain distance of the building to be able to clock in? It wouldn't let you clock in from your home at 5 o'clock in the morning and you rolled in at 6.
Yep.
Yeah. Kenan?
How much time do you have? Can you give me 5 minutes? Can you give me 5 minutes? I have 2 categories. One's my prioritized list. The other's a category of still lingering questions that I have that I think probably most of us in this room still have. But since the topic is prioritized list, dovetailing on what Bill said, I would proceed now with hiring a grant writer because that's going to be money in our pocket. The sooner, the better. I think we're one of the few counties that of our size and need that do not have one. Also, I would even dovetail on that and say if there's a need for a person to oversee ARP, this first half and the second half, for the auditor's office or whatever else, for all the reports to Treasury and being very knowledgeable about the guidelines so that we don't trip up, it might be worth considering, but that's kind of up to commissioners and the auditor. But definitely a grant writer. I would not press pause anymore on the grant writer. That's personal. That's a priority. Essential worker pay is another one that we use Joel and whatever the resources to figure out, for example, our personnel manual versus and reconcile it with what's in the Treasury final rule, that we're looking at apples and apples, and that if there's a difference or there's overlap, that we feel comfortable about what that is and be able to define that. because there's a public sector capacity component in the final rules that kind of overlaps the premium pay section, and we need to be able to know which category it falls under. And even though I've read it several times, I haven't totally wrapped my head around the difference, and I think Joel could help us out that we're comparing the right category and staying with the guidelines and staying with our personnel manual. Well, there's a category called public sector capacity, which gives us a lot of leeway. And then there's the section on premium pay. And they seem to overlap, but they're distinguishable, and we need to know how they're distinguishable, and then reconcile that with our personnel manual, because it talks about emergencies in the personnel manual. And we need to make sure we're doing it right, legally and morally correct, and also don't get slapped by Treasury. And I think the final rules is written in such a way that we can do that with some legal help. I agree with everyone. We need to prioritize county needs that have been kicked down the road for decades. There are things falling apart because we've been told we don't have money for that. And we could go on a list, each of us could do a list of 25 things in the next 10 minutes that have been kicked down the road, and then we pay for it in the long run. It could have cost $10,000 10 years ago, and we said we don't have $10,000. Now it's going to cost us $50,000. And we can't keep operating like that. So the county buildings, that might include parks, because I think Ed mentioned that, and other government-owned properties that we have let slide for a long time. And do we have underfunded or unbudgeted needs? And you mentioned earlier sheriff and EMS vehicles. We may not have enough funded for the real needs. I heard yesterday we have 2 ambulances that are falling apart, kicked down the road. And we know now that ARP monies can be used for those things. We didn't know that until last week. I would pause 2 months on big ticket items, other than what we already talked about, premium pay and grant writer. This is my opinion. Until we find out a little bit more about food and beverage projects and ready projects. Because I think we all agree that we don't want to duplicate and we don't want to leave important projects out, either one. And so if we're talking big projects other than what we've all mentioned that may be out there under consideration, we'll know probably in 2 months what's going to come forth from food and beverage. Because I think you all got Corey's message yesterday that there were 32 projects over $13 million. And when we open this ARP up, which I think we've talked about doing, maybe May when we get the second 4.6 million, because as I calculate, we're getting up to 4 million pretty quickly with just everybody's priorities. I have a feeling that we have 4+ million available for the public to apply. I think you, Bobby, yesterday said we'll probably get $20 million in requests. The needs are great, but like Steve said, this is a one-time opportunity that probably will never come our way again. We've been underfunded since they've legislated tax caps. Our budgets have been lean, our raises have been slim since 2005. So the first time in almost 2 decades, we have a unique opportunity to make a difference in this county and its citizens. I mean, we may be looking at things for county government on this first half, but we can make a big difference in the county with that second half that we've never dreamed of. Because I think people have kicked things down the road throughout the whole county because of lack of funds.
What piece of this can be brought into the general fund now that you're changing all of it?
I don't have the answer to that.
The way I read it, and Joel, you'll have to clarify this, it still has to be separated and appropriated separately. It can't just go into the general fund. It's kind of in the general fund, but not in the general fund. It still has to be appropriated out of.
You still have to specify uses for it.
Just jump it in the general fund.
It's
Right.
gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be like your Go bonds, you're gonna set up a separate fund for it. And it has special uses and it can only be spent out of that, yeah.
But there is more flexibility than what there was before.
I was just thinking in the area, how we're working on raises, can we let it just be absorbed to help with that for a few years while we're growing our tax?
There is a section under the public sector capacity that says, what's the proper term, stipend? Stipend. Incentives to keep employment. Also, there's a section in this that says we can go back and rehire losses since January 30th, 2020, which I think was the first case in Washington State. We can go back and have the employment capacity at the same level as pre-pandemic with this money, and also provide incentives for people to stay. I think Susan last month when we met mentioned something like Delaware County was providing incentives for people to move to Delaware County. Actually gave them money with their ARP monies because they realized in taxes and spending in the county was going to more than offset the economic benefit than what it was going to cost them. I don't remember what that amount was, but somebody else, Hancock County, since our last meetings, doing the same thing. They're incentivizing people moving, and we know the workforce has changed. We know that this working at home is probably going to be commonplace into the future. I think our workforce is forever changed from this point forward. They're finding out, that came out, but initial research shows that productivity working at home is no less than working on the job site in a cubicle. In fact, in some cases, this has improved. So I think we're going to see changes from here forth with that. I'm not advocating for working at home over in-person working, but I think it's a trend that you're going to see in this country that's going to change. So if we can think outside the box and come up with programs or projects that's going to generate more money, more income, because we're going to have to circumvent. If the state passes the bill of, is it inventory tax for businesses they're trying to do away with? It is going to, personal property tax for businesses. That's great for luring businesses, but that's going to take a dent in treasury and revenues. And I don't know if they think about that or not. I don't know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're want to take it from 80,000 to 250. Is that right, Bill? The personal property?
40, it would go to, yeah, I started saying it's from 40 to 80.
I thought I read something, yes. I'll have,
But it will have an, AIC says it's going to have a significant impact on our revenues to operate. So we need to think strategically and how to best use this money, which we all know. And you let me know when I get another 5 minutes for my questions that have been lingering since reading the final.
you got another 5.
I've got another 5. Thank you. And I don't want to monopolize this, but I think they're lingering in all of our minds. How and when do we reconcile possible ARP with food and beverage and/or ready projects in 2022 so we don't unduly overlap or eliminate significant projects that'll make a difference? I already mentioned that. I've already mentioned this, reconciling our personnel manual with ARP premium pay for essential workers, reconciling the finals rule treatment of public sector capacity with the premium pay sector or section, which I think Joel's going to have to help us with. Is the flexibility afforded counties as per NACO, the National Organization of Counties, also afforded to incorporated towns? Because last month I said I'd like to see us the monies they receive, the counties that are incorporated in Henry County, to give them an extra 20% to use as needed, could be for volunteer fire departments or whatever. But is the infrastructure bill, is the new final rules also afforded to incorporated towns and municipalities as they are counties? We know we do they? Because they got their monies from the state. We got our monies directly to Debbie or Treasury.
Joel, would you think that the final rule would have? Yeah.
Okay, that's good. We've been honing in on organizations that deal with counties, like AIC and NACO have strictly counties, so we didn't know if that was all the other entities. Okay. Well, then those counties, those towns don't know that they have additional flexibility, more than likely. The Caddis and all those Dunreef, Strong, they probably don't know that they have flexibility, because you were saying some counties you've talked with didn't realize they thought the restrictions were so great they couldn't find ways to use it. I think now they can. And so I don't know who communicates that to them, but it behooves that they learn this. Okay. Do we prioritize the year one monies that we received, $4.65 million, for our Henry County needs, which like government and buildings and properties that we've talked about, modernization, data, that kind of thing, and open up the second tranche, which is $4.65 million in May, to counties, citizens, entities, nonprofits, whatever, kind of like the food and beverage? That's a question, because I think we're really chipping away at our first $4.65 million. Right, from what I'm hearing in my mind, estimating. Are counties going to...
Can I interrupt you, Sam?
No, go ahead.
It seems to me that by the time we would, I think we are still developing our list. Once we maybe even advertise to the public, whoever's out there that has ideas for how to spend this money, then we as a committee here prioritize these things. I think we can look at the entire amount and not separate it into the first 4-point-something million and the second 4 point, because by the time we get our completed list, we will have the whole $9 million.
Oh.
So we don't have to worry about what came the first half or the second half. Then we prioritize the list, and we try to put a dollar amount next to each thing we have prioritized. Anything below the $9 million is pretty much out of the picture. Anything above that line, we can fund. We have already at previous meetings talked about having up to $1 million of money just for administrative costs. I think if we make our own list and we do our own homework and we know how much we want to spend in each area, we will spend far less than $1 million with experts trying to advise us how to spend this money.
It should be much less than
I
that
think it would be
now.
less than 100,000,
Yeah.
maybe 1/10 of what we already put
With the
aside.
streamlined guidelines, I don't think we're going to need to spend.
And then
any
once we
less.
have that list done and our priorities made, all we have to do is run it by Joel and company like Baker Tilly, who we've already hired, and say, can we do what we want to do?
Sorry, okay. So are you saying we should not do anything until we have, are you saying we should not use any of the money until we have a whole completed list? and this is why I asked the question, just because it would take a lot of time to get this process that you're suggesting and get all the quotes and to kind of finalize it.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
If we, as a group, decided that number one on the list is very important and should be done right away,
okay,
we could decide that
okay,
now or 2 weeks from now.
okay, because we have a bunch of people here waiting for us to
Right.
decide about
We-
a
we-
few
Because
of
if I,
these
if I
things,
were going
right?
to make any changes today, I would say we move, yes, we have this list. We move forward on essential pay and grant writer and get that buttoned down, and then we can look at everything else. Those two things, I think, are the most critical.
They're the most
They're most time
sensitive, I
They're the most
think.
time sensitive, because the grant writer will be able to help us with everything else on the list, potentially. So I would, and if I need to make it into a motion, that while we work on putting these lists together, that the top two things that we go ahead and continue to work on with Joel and whoever we need to work on is hiring a grant writer and moving forward with essential pay.
Is that a motion?
Yes. I make that a
Second
motion.
that.
Hold on a minute. So your motion is to move forward with essential pay?
Because that grant writer can help us with some of the other things on the list, potentially, that maybe instead of us having to spend $100,000 on maintenance of a building, maybe $50,000 can be used for match money for a grant to get more money.
You know, that would leverage many other things a grant writer would.
Need a motion?
So do we have a second? for
I
that
did.
motion?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Appears the ayes have it. The motion passes.
I will say that I like the idea of coming up with a list. It just seems like a long process and maybe a iterative type of process. That was why I asked the question.
I would add that the food and beverage took over 4 months to get to where they are. To open it to the public and finally get
Right, and get the application.
their 32 projects at $13.3 million.
And they
Took
still
4
haven't
months.
Prioritized them yet.
So it'd be April before we got to that point to be able to move forward in any significant way. I only had 2 other lingering questions if Ed was done. Are you done? Yes. Okay. And I say that politely and sincerely, not tongue-in-cheek. Are counties going to receive any direct or indirect monies from the infrastructure bill? We've heard very little about that. We've heard a lot about ARP from the get-go. We've heard nothing, if anything's coming directly or indirectly to counties from the infrastructure bill. Have you, Debbie? Or AIC? It's a great secret to us as of today. How closely do we follow the lead of other counties? Because we've it's like school superintendents. They call each other to see, are you going to have a snow delay or cancellation because there's safety in numbers? Do we take the lead? Do we learn from their mistakes? For example, this week I think it was from Jeff Ray, found out that the Hancock County Community Foundation was having a workshop for nonprofits. I don't know how much money. They're at least twice our population, so they probably got 20 million. They've already set aside 3 million for nonprofits, and they're having a workshop in a couple weeks for nonprofits. Do we kind of look to see what other counties are doing and maybe generate some more ideas, thinking outside the box? And some Indiana counties have tried already premium pay options. We know some, like Delaware County, are being sued over it. So I think that's why we need to be deliberate, make sure we're following the law, make sure we're following our handbook, our personnel handbook, and then we do it right and fair and equitably. Those are my lingering questions that I've been mulling over since reading this final rule.
I had another thought about something we might want to go ahead with now was the facility assessment. seems like it'll be hard to start prioritizing county building needs and have dollar amounts if we don't know what's going to come up on that list.
Joel, so will we need to amend the current ordinance? Because I'm assuming the discussion has kind of skirted around it. Are we going to take everything as, all the money as lost revenue? We haven't even decided on that. So the commissioners are going to have to amend that ordinance to do so, and then we can.
Yeah, whatever you spend, you'll either have to approve it by ordinance or resolution,
Okay.
depending on what it is.
I'm sorry, Susan, that just hit into my mind when you were saying that. I was
No,
like, oh,
that's
wait, we got to get
completely
that in. So we'd need to do that before we do
You
anything.
give premium pay for essential workers, you also, council also
Right,
approve salary.
right.
And that's the state board of accounts requirement.
Okay. Go ahead and finish because I lost my second thought. Maybe I'll get it back.
I was just throwing that out there. Do we want to go ahead with the facility assessment? So I think we do, yeah.
So do we have to put that in I don't know that that is particular under the interim rules. Would we have to put everything into lost revenue and then be able to take that out?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you allocate the expense, I think you're fine. I think everything should be allocated in separate funds.
okay.
I think that's correct, yeah.
I think that's a very wise idea,
Yeah.
because if we delay that, it's going to affect our other decisions.
So I'd make a motion that we go ahead with the DLZ facility assessment.
Got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. I might also make a motion that whatever we're going to do I know we have looked at an application for the general public to have input into what goes on this list, and we have not put it out there yet. I think obviously people on this committee have added things every time we've had a meeting, but I think we need to open it up now because there are things that may come in that we haven't thought about. And once this list is prioritized, those things may be higher or lower on the list, but the longer we wait to ask for public input, the more adjustments we're going to have to make to our list.
I guess I thought the public input part was for the application for other entities to apply for grant monies, not to approve what we have decided or whatever we make the decision to do with the county stuff. I didn't think we were getting public input for agreement of our list. I thought it was more for the application process. For example, the Arts Park applying for money to fix their roof. Not public input that this is our list and we want everybody to agree with what we're doing on this list.
No, that's not what I meant. What I meant is for, like your example, I already put that on our list, but open it up to the public for their input.
Oh, for an application process like food and beverage application.
Right, so that we would know what types of things they would like to add to this list. Not
Well,
that
I
they
don't know that
have,
it's necessarily adding to the list. It becomes an application process that then we go through and review the applications. This list is basically what we came up with for county needs, what we determined as county needs, unless I'm interpreting it wrong. The other is an application process. I think they're two different things, unless I'm misunderstanding, and somebody can correct me.
I guess they would be, but we're talking about the same pot of money.
Here's my thought, Ed. When I said I would suggest, and others may agree or disagree, ouch, that we press pause for 2 months because I think the lingering questions here with us making lists is we do not yet know what's happening with food and beverage and ready. I think we'll definitely know in 2 months what's happening with food and beverage. Ready may take longer because that's a state process that we know we have, what, $15 million for East Central Indiana? That's for 8 counties. So we don't know if Henry's going to get 2, 3. It probably depends on what they think the quality of our projects are. And they're going to look at overlap and silos, and they're going to look at where the needs are. They're going to have to prioritize. So we may not know what Ready's going to do, but we'll know in 2 months pretty much what's coming out of food and beverage. In fact, they're going to disclose the applications on January 25th. My concern is that we don't get too far. I'm a very impatient person. I would have liked to see us take more action prior to now. But I also would think we ought to be methodical and the left hand know what the right hand's doing. We have never had food and beverage, ARP, and Ready come to us at the same time as a county. This is, like Steve said, once in a... So I think we need to do it right. I'm not opposed to opening it up. The only question we had 2 months ago was what percentage was going to be required as a match. And we floated anywhere from 10% to 50%, depending on the project. The universal I've seen from everything coming from the state, including community crossings, is 20%. They need to put skin in the game.
I guess I just don't see that as a problem because, for example, if some outside nonprofit asked for $150,000 for such and such project, and in the meantime, food and beverage gave them that money, we just cross them off our list.
Yeah, if we let them know ahead of time that there's no duplication, yes.
There's no problem waiting. No need to wait until they act, because if they do act, and it's on our list also, we just cross it off our list.
Wouldn't you have to put on the application that if you receive other monies, then your application's not considered by the county for ARP money? You would have to put that out there to them and let them know that.
Or we're not going to duplicate
Yeah.
what's being funded elsewhere. Even after the application is submitted, it's subject to review.
I think some of us have this, I know I'm struggling with this hesitation to make sure that we take care of county needs. So when Kenan said, if we use the first half for county money, that makes me feel kind of comfortable that we won't skip over what the county needs and move into community projects, because this is an opportunity to update ambulances, help fire departments have the equipment they need. So I don't really have a conclusion other than say, feel kind of comfortable with the first piece of going ahead and doing some of the things the county needs with the building and saving the other half of it for community needs.
Especially since this money doesn't have to be appropriated until 2024. I mean, this is a long process. So I kind of am in the same boat that I kind of want to prioritize on the county stuff before we open up for community requests.
Well, even the 2 months from now, I think we'll have ideas that have gelled and have come forward. And I guess I'm suggesting we have evolved our thinking so much in the past year as the guidelines have changed. I think as we get the food and beverage request, and that's going to happen, we'll hear what they are at least on January 25th, I feel. And that's, 2 weeks? And we haven't really talked about finalizing an application. I think we did, but we've talked about a lot of things since, October, when we talked about the application. I think maybe at the next meeting, just a suggestion, that we look at that application and get it pinned down. And that'll occur, if we have it after the 25th, that'll occur after that food and beverage. And I think we'll have a much better idea as to how to proceed, Ed. And I'm not even suggesting waiting until May when we get the second amount. But I'm thinking if we wait until March, we'll have a much better idea of what's ready, looking, maybe not ready, but food and beverage looking like. And we put that out there, and if it takes the time it took food and beverage to come up with a list, it'll be April before we get their lists. And a month later, we'll have the monies. And during that month, we can start talking about how to divvy out the second $4.65 million. I wouldn't want to be in the Food and Beverage Committee or Advisory Committee right now with $13 million and a maximum, $4 million if we decide to bond. I mean, right now they know they've got $1.2 million to work with $13 million and $13.3 in request. But the council hasn't decided yet if we're going to consider bonding, which would be up to $4 million if my memory serves me correctly. And I've talked way too much today, and I apologize.
I'm not sure I remembered what I would like to do. My motion was that we finalize that application and get it out to the public. It seems like a consensus is that you all would rather wait. And if that is the case, I will withdraw my motion.
Say, one of the concerns I have is you got 2 or 3 projects on this list right now that far exceed the $9 million. So we could dump all of it in just 1 or 2 projects on the list that we have now. And so trying to entertain other ideas to put on this list, what do? Do you start a project and then don't finish it because we don't put enough money into it? And then we've got all these little half starts everywhere that never get finished. And that to me is a waste of our time.
I feel like if we open it up to the community, we're going to get a lot of really neat ideas. They're going to be ideas that came in through food and beverage. They're coming in through Ready. And then we stand between these really neat ideas and needing new carpet in here. And we could still vote for carpet, and that would be fine. So I think it's okay with me if we open it up to everybody, but sometimes you have to fix the plumbing even when you want a new car. So I just wanted to put that out there. What's the best way to make sure we do what needs to be done?
And we still have how much reserved from the GO maintenance bond from a year and a half ago, 2 years ago?
Everybody keeps spending that money. That money keeps getting dwindled away to nothing. So
And it's yet to have been spent on anything it was appropriated for.
Well, that sounds like business as usual years ago.
See, and that's what's upsetting is we've had all these things that keep getting kicked down the road in this county that never get taken care of.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden they've unloaded and you've got almost $200,000 in a heating system across the street that's defunct. You've got heating and air conditioning in this building that's crap. You've got all these other things that are falling apart. So now we're slowly dwindling away money that we're supposed to use for improvements that we're having to do stuff that should have been done a decade ago. And now we're wanting to spend more money that we don't really have. And how are we going to sustain all this stuff once this money's gone? That's my concern. It's going to go away, and we're not going to actually make a dent and then piss a bunch of people off. I'm sorry. That's where my concern is. I'm sorry for getting on my soapbox, but I keep hearing we want to keep going,
Well,
but we're running out of money. We've already spent more than what we got, and we haven't even made a dent in anything yet. So I'm a little concerned that we need to concentrate on our priorities and figure out what we can afford to do and do those things first.
I don't think anyone disagrees with that statement either.
Just as an aside, some of you people in the back look like younger people. If you need a sideline heating and air conditioning, you can make a lot of money.
Is that based on the bids we've been getting?
Yes.
Yeah, plumbing and electrical's kind of up there
Okay,
too.
so it's 3:10 and there's another meeting in here soon. One thing I do need to bring up is that our next ARP meeting is scheduled for January 26th at 2 o'clock. And I think many of us will be at the AIC event. There's an AIC event that week. So if we can move, do you want to reschedule that meeting for a different day or just wait until the next meeting.
I have a quick comment about, so I think a lot of people are here about essential pay, and I think it creates a perception that we're not going to do it or dragging our feet if we don't talk about it. So I thought maybe we could tell them when we are going to decide, when we might have an answer for them.
I think that's dependent upon Joel getting the information about the public sector stuff.
Okay.
I mean, me personally, I would like to have something figured out.
So we need to know first.
You know,
so-
yeah.
Okay.
Could,
Okay, that's the 27th. And then we can,
Guidance I would think would be kind of how do you want to do it, what employees do you want to pay what? And there are a couple different ways I've seen it done. One community allocated a set amount, and I can't remember, it was 75,000. And then it said these are the eligible employees, and we'll take this period of time. Based on how many hours those people work, they got, it varied based on the actual number of hours. The city of Newcastle was basically said everyone that's in police, fire, and EMS is going to get X number of hours at $13 an hour, and everybody else is going to get a smaller number of hours at $13 an hour. So they differentiated based on what they perceived to be, police, fire, and EMS, and the ones that had greater risk, so they were going to get greater pay. And I think they sort of shot for what the dollar amount they wanted to be was, and then they said, okay, during this period, people get 100 hours, 200 hours, whatever the number was, of premium pay.
I think then what we need to settle on is what our personnel manual says under emergency, and does that fit and jive with ARP?
yeah, I think those are two, can that, because of the emergency declaration, can that be paid out of ARP money with the one-to-one? Okay, that can be paid out of ARP as well.
May I suggest that maybe we meet that Friday after our council meeting, because it's after AIC, which is going to present more information on ARP, and it'll be the day after our council meeting where we're going to get advice on essential pay and maybe focus on the application and essential pay at our January 27th, is it? 8th, Friday the 28th.
Yours is the 27th, the 28th. I'm not available on the 28th, but if everybody else can meet, I'm okay with that. Guys,
Or that Monday? Or you're close?
Hold on.
I think people would like to know as soon as possible, like January.
January
What day of the
31st.
week is that? Is that a Wednesday?
Monday.
What time are we saying? Okay. I can do
Monday, January 31st at 2 o'clock. Okay, so we will,
that. So that's our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, before it's paid out, you have to have salary.
salary ordinance.
We need to decide.
And
the
you have to
amount before the
remember,
salary ordinance.
we're all new doing payroll, so I want everybody to know when you do it, it's not gonna be a snap of a finger turnaround. It's gonna take us time to figure it out, and everybody's gonna have to be really patient with us.
I think I've proven I'm patient already, but at the same time, we'd like to just have time that we can lock down.
Are we,
Do you want to do it the week before, sometime the week of the 17th
I
instead of the
think we
week
should
after?
have a meeting just for this, essential pay. Make sure we have a choice at the end of it and move forward is really what I think. And then give Debbie the time she needs to do it, but.
I'm good on the 20th.
But, hey, the question is, the issues we had relating to what we talked about, the lingering questions with essential pay, Joel said he'd have the answers by our council meeting.
27.
Which is the 27th.
Well, to get this moving forward instead of waiting until February. Next Thursday at 2 o'clock.
Well, we have
Thursday
that,
the 20th at
we have a
2 o'clock.
PC meeting.
Yeah, that's at 5.
That's a big day for Kenan, though. That's a lot.
Oh, sorry, that's a
No,
prep
no,
day for
no,
Kenan. I'm
no.
sorry.
Is that not what you meant? Sorry.
That's okay, I'll prep prior.
Well, I haven't received anything yet, so. Are there cases? I haven't received anything. have
I
you?
was going to find out tomorrow or Friday if there's cases.
So July the 20th, or July.
The other J month.
Yeah,
Besides
January
June.
20th at 2 o'clock.
January the 20th.
So we changed from the 31st to the 20th
Yeah.
at 2 o'clock?
If there's nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.